Hi, I'm Scott Wright, and live from the Gallup Riverfront campus in Omaha, Nebraska, this is Gallup's Called to Coach, recorded September 19th, 2014. Called to Coach is a resource for those who want to help others discover and use their strengths. We have Gallup experts and independent strengths coaches share tactics, insights, and strategies to help coaches maximize the talent of individuals, teams, and organizations around the world. If you have questions or comments or contributions during the webcast today, we have a live chat room available right below the video window that you're watching right now. You can log into our chat wing site and go ahead and send any notes or questions you'd like to ask of our guest or our host today. And if you're listening to the recorded version of this webcast or you need custom solutions built for small, medium, or large organizations, please contact Gallup at coaching@gallup.com. You can also watch the video and both streaming or downloadable audio offline for listening to past shows over at coaching.gallup.com. And don't forget Gallup-StrengthsCenter.com for all your coaching resources and training needs. For those of you used to seeing Jim Collison in the producer's seat today, don't worry. Jim had a meeting conflict today, so I've stepped in to play the role of producer for this particular webcast. And regular viewers of our Call to Coach will recognize our host, Jeremy Petrosini. Jeremy is a senior learning and development consultant right here on the Gallup Riverfront with me, and he's fresh off of a 4 days straight of teaching our new Coaching Entrepreneurial Strengths course. Jeremy, welcome to the show today.
Scott, thanks. And I'll tell Jim this too, but you definitely have the radio voice, right? I mean, you are, when people call in and get the answer machine, you are the voice of God, as we say.
I'm the voice of Gallup.
Voice of Gallup. Well, hey, everybody, welcome. Excited to be here. As always, it's always fun to just be back here live with you guys, hear from our coaches, best practices, all that we have going on. As Scott mentioned, just came off of 4 days. We actually had 2 back-to-back courses around our new entrepreneurial StrengthsFinder tool, which Lexi, who's our guest today, has actually been through that training. So we're excited for you guys to hear a little bit about that as well. But always exciting to talk to coaches as they're working with executives, managers, individuals, entrepreneurs, to really, again, help people discover their natural God-given talents and just leverage them to impact their own personal productivity as well as the people around them and the communities where they live. So excited to be here today. We, again, who keep tracking on the Gallup Strengths Center website, the number of completes, we are now over 11 million people who have discovered their strengths. And again, from a Gallup perspective, we don't just want there to be 1 billion plus people who know their strengths, but we want them to really own them and be able to apply them. And we believe that only happens through them having a conversation with a coach, somebody that understands the instrument in a way that it brings about change. And so it's part of our mission here to really partner with and equip over 1 million coaches like yourselves, many who are listening or maybe new to Gallup. It's part of our mission, again, to really equip you to be on this mission for us and with us to see lives change. So we're excited today to have Lexi Thompson with us. Hi, Lexi.
Hello.
Lexi is a certified coach and actually runs a business as well. She's a managing partner of Focal Fusion. One of the things, and I appreciate this, Lexi, in our interactions and the time you and I have actually spent together, just with you showing up here in the Riverfront for courses, is one of the things that Lexi really brings to her clients is this element of just being very direct, straightforward, really pushing clients to be at their absolute best. And there's an element for many of you who are out there as coaches, you would say, well, isn't that kind of what we all do? But again, I think part of it, and Lexi, I knew you kind of refer to it this way often as facilitating crucial conversations, right? Conversations that we need to have immediately. There's an urgency behind them. Obviously, your top 5 kind of play into that, and we'll let you share those here in a moment. But thank you so much for being here with us today.
No, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
So before we dive in, and I know we were just talking about this before the call, but share with the listeners your top 5, if you would.
Yeah, so strategic, connectedness, futuristic, intellection, and command.
Awesome. And give us a little bit of background. I know I kind of just shared kind of high level. You're obviously a professional coach. This is what you do. You're somebody who, as a coach consultant, it wasn't Gallup that opened the door for you on that. That was something that you kind of were already doing. Share with us a little bit, though, of your story. Again, it's always fun to hear when we tell people, hey, you're the one who's, you're the coaches out there saying you feel called to this. Tell us a little bit about your own journey so we can kind of get to know you a little bit.
Sure. I started out in executive headhunting, and when we would place senior executives, they'd call with a multitude of questions, comments, concerns, a lot around team dynamics. And so I started helping them out in the conversations that they needed to have with people, onboarding, offboarding, those types of things, and looked for a few tools to help aid that so we could transfer that knowledge so they could do it again and again and again. And I brought Strengths and Crucial Conversations, the actual book, together because Strengths offers the framework, but the Crucial Conversations offer the how to have those conversations in a timely, respectful manner. And a lot of that work just came as the evolution of supporting executives that I placed in key roles, and they kept taking me with them. So that's how the coaching evolved.
Yeah. And tell us a little bit about that, because I think just even a little bit with the overlap to Crucial Conversations. I know you and I were talking about this earlier, even of, I think sometimes people think, even from a Gallup perspective, are we saying this, StrengthsFinder is kind of the be-all, end-all tool, but how did leveraging strengths in that ability for people to discover their strengths, how did that change the conversation or strengthen it for you, where you kind of wanted to get certified and then kind of have made it kind of a best practice?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that are important here. So when we decided to create a business, we had to create what was the platform or the value statements we were going to stand on.
Yep.
And there's a couple for me. One is that my personal mission statement is to create safe places for souls to show up. And that, in my opinion, starts from a place of abundance. And so I looked for tools that started from a non-deficit position, specifically when you were looking at those Crucial Conversations, performance management. We start with what you do have, and then we can talk about managing what it is you don't have, because we all have gaps.
Yep.
And there weren't that many tools that were either standing alone or not in combination that could do that very well. So I would bring Strengths in, and what I would find is everybody could learn the 1.0 definitions, and they could apply them what I would consider a very flat, non-dimensional way.
Yep.
So what ended up happening was we had to learn how to actually talk about who we were in that space, and how others need to be able to share how they saw us showing up or not with that strength. So the Crucial Conversations, or I'm starting to use a nonviolent communications model as well, and so we're learning to be able to share, hey Jeremy, I see your maximizer, and have that conversation if it's showing up a little unsophisticated today in a manner that's respectful to you, but lets you know that maybe you need to dial up or down that strength.
Yeah.
And that seems to be really working.
Yeah. Again, that piece, and you're referencing something we talk a lot about, obviously, in all of our coaching curriculum and training, but that element of helping the individual take ownership, right? For your words of dial up, down. It's, again, like knobs on a gas grill of, do I need to use a little bit less maximizer, a little bit maybe more of my woo? Like, what's the scenario where we intentionally, again, are aware of our strengths, aware of those signature themes of talent, but how can I leverage them? Am I overutilizing them? That awareness piece, I think, is so key.
Yeah, and I think the School of Hard Knocks, being that command is in my top 5, it's often misunderstood and often misrepresented, or lack of sophistication on the holder, and I definitely went through that in my career. And I, by some of those painful lessons, was able to kind of figure out that self-awareness piece. And command is one of those things, you either need it or you don't. You don't necessarily need variations of it.
Yep.
So how do you put it in your pocket when you don't need it? That's tough.
Yep. Well, and I like that analogy, because in your pocket it's still there, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean it's on your forehead, right? Right. Share a little bit too, Lexi, because I know even in our class and with your and my interaction, you've heard me, right? You know where I'm going. You know where I'm going with this. But the component, I think, of, again, there's both a self-perception of these themes as good or bad, there's also that others perception. So right away we go, okay, she's got strategic. What does it tell me or not tell me about her or him when you're looking at different individuals? For yourself, like you said, even kind of your own journey around this, you had taken StrengthsFinder a couple of different times, right? And we kind of talked about command. Do you want that one on your name tag? Should we put it on somebody else? Let's leave it just below the surface. What was it for you? I guess give the listeners a glimpse into your own story of where you began to kind of own that and realize this is something I can carry in my pocket with me all the time, that I don't need to be afraid of or don't need to try to leave home.
Yeah, no, thanks for the question. So the journey started.
And you knew where I was going with that.
Yeah, this question comes
This is not a pre-call question, but you're like, I know what he's going to ask.
And it's a good question. So the journey started when I first started playing with strengths and seeing the viability of it, the testability and all that. So I did what I would not do again and don't recommend to people, but I did it. Was I took this a ton of times, exactly 13 times now. Okay. So in that space, I didn't get the full 34 report all 34 times, so I only had vision to the top 5. And they didn't change much. 3 were always there. Strategic was always number 1. Command, 11 out of 13 showed up in the top 5. So I don't think I can say it's not there, right? I can try to say, I could pick the 2 that it didn't show up, which I was trying to do in my last class. But the reality is it shows up. So, and I think, Sheryl Sandberg is another resource around this, specifically with females in command and bossy and all of the writing that she's done. And it's just one of those cultural things for females specifically that is just not necessarily very well accepted to show up the same way gender as it would for both genders. I think it's getting to be, I've done some work with HCI and done some blogging around women in leadership. I think we're getting there. And I do think that maybe the way a woman or a female chooses to handle this particular strength, there's some nuances to that, because I think sometimes we get into that sucker's choice of I have to be this way or that way, and there really is a blend between who I am and how I show up. But it was painful, and it was painful for people I managed, when I was younger, and some of the feedback that at the time didn't feel good, but definitely I was blessed enough to receive it to help me figure out what this strength, but really sometimes wasn't as strength was.
How have you seen, so in owning that command, and thank you, by the way, both for your vulnerability, but the reason I ask you the question too is agreeing with you 100%. Oftentimes this is one of those themes, again, it's less frequent in our database, so when it shows up high for somebody, they may not have as much like, well, who else has it? Am I the only one? Why? It can have a little bit more of that edge to it without understanding, and you're absolutely right, especially when I coach women in leadership who have this. It's ooh, is this a bad one? Can I take it again? Maybe not 13 times, right? Can I take it again, and will it just go away? So people don't see that it's there. What have been the real benefits of owning this theme, understanding that it's there? How have you seen it serve you well in your life, specifically even with your coaches or with your clients that you coach?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I'm very purposeful about the type of client or the level inside an organization that I'll coach. I think all of the influencing themes come with a lot of energy and passion by nature, and so I'll play in the C-suite, the more executive suite, because that tends to show up more there. And therefore, I'm not showing up as intimidating. In fact, it's needed in order for that real conversation to evolve. So I put myself in places where that emotional polarization skill that I have in crisis or whatever is being utilized very well. And I've learned to leverage a team of coaches around me that's just a little too much. In certain layers or certain types of organizations, that command strength isn't necessarily the most useful strength up front. What I do find is the calls that I get for coaching, just by nature of who I am, are for mediation, negotiation, conflict resolution, anything where emotions are high. It's just being able to get real sophisticated real quickly with that strength. And I've learned to actually love it, where before I used to actually want to not talk about it.
And that's the piece, Lexi. I mean, even in the 4.5 days you and I had together, and I don't remember when that was, 9 months, a year ago. But that element of just seeing that in you, and again, you demonstrating that to the rest of your peers, in that class of two things. When you own it, it's there. It doesn't again mean that it has to be forceful. but there are situations in life that cause some leadership that we need somebody to have a voice, right, to be directive with it. And unfortunately, like you said, there's that there's that biased approach of, why is it that men with command, it's like, oh, that's a great leadership talent, and women, it's like, why are you so bossy? Like, who put you in charge? But there's that element of when you can own it. You have clients time and time again. Again, I know even some of your peers in that class were thanking you. Thanks for being so direct with me. I mean, you've heard my story that, the person who was coaching me even before I joined Gallup had command high and was willing to say, hey, that's great that you have those other 2 job offers, but you really need to just take the Gallup job if they offer you. And I'm like, well, I don't know why. And he's like, I'm telling you why, right? But the directiveness, oftentimes I was at a point in my decision making, I'm like, I needed some of that, right? I'm high self-assurance, so I kind of knew that already, but just to have somebody who wasn't afraid to be direct with me. And like you said, the other piece that I think is a key takeaway for people on the call is what it means is you love coaching senior executives. I know that was even part of your passion, being one of the very first coaches to go through our entrepreneurial, StrengthsFinder training, which we're now calling the tool the EP10, the entrepreneurial profile with the 10 talent items. But coaching entrepreneurs, not necessarily easier for everybody, right? And an entrepreneur doesn't necessarily need just a coach who wants to just say, let's talk about your positivity, and but there's that element of give me some edge, give me some push, and it is okay, by the way, and I'm saying this to coaches out there, if you're somebody that wants to work with 7th graders and just discovering their top 5, that's awesome and that's beautiful and that's needed, but there's also that need for people that are willing to kind of say, I'm not intimidated by senior executives or hard-charging leaders or individuals, and that excites me. And even crisis situations, like you said, that's where they need a voice. They need a mediator. They need somebody who's going to come in and kind of help bring some of that. So.
Yeah, and one of the cool things that I'm learning is through some recent education that I've been in is that, remember my mission statement is creating safe places. So you can't be hard-charging and not create safety. And so that's kind of the fine art that I've gotten to the point where I can keep it safe, but I'm not necessarily emotionally available to be with someone in that space. So I'm really learning and fine-tuning some of those areas of command that sit there that they're just not as easily accessible. And I think my connectedness is the one probably that I lean on to kind of show up available to someone when sometimes it's just more of a challenge. But I think the theme dynamics is really important to mention because we all have 10 or 12 that we're operating in most of the time. So
yeah, no, that's helpful. And again, just even back to your analogy of in your pocket, it's like, all right, then my connectedness comes out, right? How does it soften it, or how do I, again, you bring a lot of strategic thinking themes with your strategic and futuristic intellection. I mean, I think those different components, even connectedness, I mean, I have that one a lot. Even earlier you were saying I can see that Scott Wright and Heather Wright are married. Right, that was the obvious call out. Wow, how did you use your talent to figure that out? But sometimes connectedness, it's in that relationship building category, but it can be really leveraged as a thinking theme as well. So you realizing, hey, there are those components where I can be smart about it, when to leverage it, when to not, right? Share with us too, and I appreciate again just kind of your insights into your own discoveries, how you've leveraged them in your success as a coach and consultant. Give us an example. It's always fun for people, I think, to hear of kind of those impact stories. So you're working with clients. What have you been able to help some of your clients do? What's been the benefit of Strengths and your approach that you've taken where you've really seen it impact their personal lives or their business?
Yeah, so I'll do the business because that's my passion. Strengths is fun, and it's a definite huge tool and lever for the work we do. All for performance, though. So when people start the Strengths journey with us, we're really, really clear about the business strategy that we're aligning this work to. I was just with an executive team at a hospital here. I did a 2-day Strengths kind of leadership powwow, ooh, don't we all feel good kind of thing. And it was wonderful. But then when they called back because they really liked it, and 95% of their directors, there was a group of like 150 people, 95% of them said, we want more of this for development. The next question had to get real fast. And so we spent 4 hours with the executive team on Monday really fleshing out what the business needles are that need to move and how are we going to point this talent and the strengths at them to create that to happen faster or better, however that the KPI is. So I would tell you that connection I don't know that a lot of people spend time doing it, and I think it's a detriment when you don't, because yes, we want it to be about people. Yes, we want you to show up as strong. We know that if you show up strong, everything else then follows. But that measurement piece for the business sector is really, really important. And a lot of coaches will ask me a key question like, how do you do that? How do you figure out how to aim that, which is your aiming space, right? Which is, to me, naming it and claiming it, that's fun. But aiming it is where the rubber meets the road. And I would tell you that that's where our coaching firm and team has the most impact, and why we are with clients for 2, 3, 4 years.
Yeah, that piece, and again, just reiterating that, again, in our coaching curriculum, we talk about naming, claiming, aiming, as you just referenced. But that aiming piece, what are we pointing it toward, right? Even when Don Clifton began to really look into what makes people tick, he started by studying performance, high-performing people, right? Leaders, entrepreneurs, even teachers. He wanted to look at what do the best do that drives their performance, and it was the fact that they were all able to say, I play to my strengths. Their strengths were different. Obviously, the research we've now done and created lets us kind of help people discover that. But the aiming it piece, like you said, is the critical factor. It's, do you want to see increase in sales? Do you want, like, and I like the way you framed it up too, Lexi. It's not the same for everybody, right? It's like, what does performance mean for you? Why are we having this dialogue? Or what is it that your team wants to accomplish more of? And I think when you can start there, when you can start with, here's how it's going to impact, you know, my business, my personal life, whoever it is that you're coaching, my team, you know, my own performance, the organizational, you know, performance. I used to love, there was an electronics store, a nationally owned electronics store, but they use strengths for decades, and they've kind of changed some of their HR leaders, so it's not as prevalent as it once was, unfortunately. But you used to be able to walk into any of their stores, which now everybody's like, I just buy it online anyways, right? But you used to walk into their stores and ask one of the people there, you know, like, hey, what are your top 5? And they knew it. They knew their strengths, you know, and they kind of were able to kind of talk about how they leverage their signature themes, you know, to help you or to do their job. But that performance piece, I think, again, is where it really gets fun for people. So are there any other, in thinking about that, kind of making that connection, because I do think that's a harder thing to do sometimes, are there kind of tips or tricks that you found that you use a lot? Again, your emphasis is, you know, kind of pushing people toward improved performance. Is there advice you would give on things that you've done or things that other coaches could kind of emulate a little bit?
Yeah, I think that my recruiting background gave me a competitive advantage, because when we would go into an executive headhunting role, there was a lot of research behind what's the company, who are they in the market, what are they up for, what are their challenges, before we even met with them. And what I find today is a lot of my peer group don't do that homework. So oftentimes, if I'm coaching a coach, I'm asking them, what the client's going to want to know that they already did, that they did their homework. And then that way they can go in, and it's not that they're going to have the answer, but they're going to know pretty much what direction, if they're going north, south, east, or west. That client. And so in that conversation, then you do your this next part, and it seems like it's a silly thing to say to coaches, but you need to be quiet a lot. And because a lot of times the distinction between consulting and coaching is there is a distinction. And so when you're in a discovery mode, they talk more than you do. And when I'm bringing new coaches into our practice, I shadow that first 2 or 3 meetings, because that's the thing I'm looking for the most. Are they listening? Are they making some connections that need to be made? Because we're really problem solvers and partners. And we may or may not be the solution to the problem, but if our firm isn't, we'll definitely connect you to who is. So being holistic with the client, I think, is really important, and not just the what's in it for me. And unfortunately, I see a lot of very myopic approaches to that problem.
Well, and I think sometimes, and you can respond to this, I think sometimes what I hear and see coaches do is they get a little bit caught up in the energy, which we love that the energy's there around strengths. I mean, the year's not over yet, but StrengthsFinder 2.0 is still the best-selling book on Amazon.com. You're like, okay, there's something behind this. You know, Paul Allen, our strengths evangelist, always says it's not a best-selling book. It's a revolution, right? It's a movement that's out there, and that's why it continues to grow. Even though people can just buy, you know, a pin code online, it's like buying the book and understanding it and leveraging it is impactful for people and continues to be. I think because of that energy, what I've seen happen, Lexi, and again you can reply to this, is they get so caught up in the whole idea of strengths and it's fun and even the leader is like, this is really interesting. The conversation is so consumed just around the strengths profile or the strengths of the team that we forget about, oh, and this is a business leader that maybe I don't know much about their business. So by stepping back and doing the hard work, like you said, of what's your business, why do you want to do this, tell me some growth goals that you have. Now let's talk about your strengths. It's like, again, that part is almost easier, especially the more you're familiar with this, and strengths become second nature for you, right, with the training and exposure you've had. So doing that hard work, I appreciate that you're saying that to the coaches that you train or advise. Doing the hard work on understanding their business, understanding their needs, understanding what would impact look like, and we try to emphasize that a lot here at Gallup as well with our clients. Then let's bring strengths in as kind of an accelerator or a catalyst to get us there. Is that accurate? I mean, you've seen that same thing.
Perfect,
so excited, so much energy around StrengthsFinder that it's like, well, let's not forget about that. We want to use it for something.
Yes, absolutely. Because one of the things that we sometimes I've seen, you'll go into an executive's office, and if you look much like the back of my office here, there's a lot of books on the shelf. And they go to a conference, they see a cool book, they bring it back, they give it to the HR department and say, go do it. And then that becomes an HR thing of the day, and it sometimes doesn't get legs underneath of it. And strengths is so much more than that. It is a revolution. It is actionable. It is leverageable, and I think it should be used responsibly. Yeah.
No, that's great. One more question for you, and then Scott, I know you've got some questions from our listeners, so we'll then pull in a couple of those. Sure. There's a lot of people out there, and I get this question a lot too, and it's one I don't often give a good answer to because it's not in Gallup's wheelhouse of what we do best, but it's in that arena of, hey, I'm starting my own coaching business or consulting practice, or I've launched it, but finding clients, like what do I do, where do I go? And again, it looks different again for an independent coach or consultant than it does for the kind of clients that Gallup's working with a lot of other research and consulting components that we offer. What's the advice that you give? You've obviously done this. You're successful with this. I always laugh because obviously when there's things at Gallup that my entrepreneurial talents, I'm always saying we should also do this and this. So when those leaders would come in the room, I'm like, Lexi, what do you think? You're an outsider. Like tell these guys what we should do, right? But that element of how do we get more going, I think, is something that coaches often say, I've got the coaching experience and the talent, but how do I grow my business, or where do I start, or where do I find customers? How would you address, I kind of gave you a couple different questions there, but just even as you're responding to those self-starters or independent coaches, consultants, what's your advice to them?
So oftentimes, first of all, I ask them if they really want to own a business. Because as an entrepreneur, there are two different roles. Being coach and being entrepreneur are very different. I just happen to be a coach who is an entrepreneur, and I don't think it's for everybody, and that's okay, right? So I think that's the first question, that you just kind of got to do your homework. And I think a great place to start, and we'll just plug it, and is the ESF. I just think, or EP10, sorry. So I think you start there. Those are 10 things that you've got to be able to do, whether it's yourself or you outsource them. Or whatever, but pay attention and get them aligned and addressed quickly. I think that would be a really good place to start. The next thing, when I got started, I gave a lot of my time away, right? So I made investments in people, and I made investments in organizations, because my connectedness says, hey, if I deposit over here, eventually it'll come back. And it had through my recruiting experience, because those people were calling me. They were executives in suites now. So I knew that was going to work. And so I'd go speak or keynote or pick up a team or pick up a pilot at, either at a loss leader, as a loss leader, or at cost many times, and grow a client. And that strategy has worked really, really well for us, to the point now where we don't have to take a loss leader anymore, right? You kind of grow out of that phase, and you grow up, and you start to get your market share, and you understand what that is and find your niche. And I think the niche part is also an evolution of a coach. I don't think you'd be able to coach everybody. That's why I'm excited to have a team of coaches around me, because our breadth is much better. Because there's other coaches that do other things really, really well that I don't even touch. So I hope that answered your question.
No, I think it's great. And again, just to reiterate, kind of if I'm tracking with you, your two keys of advice. That second one, find your niche market, right? Who are the individuals that you get excited about? And again, I think that's even where that referral basis comes from. But that first one, you know, the ESF, the Entrepreneurial Strength Finder, which I kind of alluded to the fact, relaunching it under the EP10 entrepreneurial profile, and there's these 10 talents that you kind of hit on. Again, the Entrepreneurial Strength Finder book is on Amazon, so people can buy it. It has the code in it. Also through you know, the Strength Center website, you know, individuals can purchase access to that code on there as well. And like Lexi said, it's just going to give you a snapshot to you know, with these 10 talents, these common talents that we found successful entrepreneurs possess. Do I have those, right? Do I maybe have 5 of them, and maybe I need a partner that's going to help me? Or does it just give some validation? And to your earlier point, you are a coach who is an entrepreneur, right? There are entrepreneurs who are not coaches, and there are coaches who are not entrepreneurs, and that's okay too. Some of those people are part of your team. Some of them, by the way, you can be an independent contractor. I have a friend who's a graphic designer, right? I have a friend who's a graphic designer, not an entrepreneur. People think he is because they're like, oh, he owns his own business, but he's like, he has no real vision to want to grow it and hire a bunch of people. And again, we don't need to debate the term, but it's this idea of entrepreneurs are individuals that really have that growth stamina, that want to turn an idea into a customer. It's not just an idea. It's not just I have a service and I want to be self-employed, but I want to grow something. I want to start something. They actually can't help but want to grow and start something, right? You can't help but push us, right, to help your business and push your clients all in a good way. But I think just even laying that out there for people, that because that's available, they can get a snapshot of, you know, is this something I do, or am I a great promoter, but I'm not as strong with delegating, right? Kind of gives them amongst those talent traits where they're strong, where they're not. So, Scott, I know you've got questions.
Yeah, I'm actually just sitting here loving. I'm loving the fact that I'm on the core team that helped develop Entrepreneurial StrengthsFinder, now Entrepreneurial Profile 10. So I'm absolutely loving the fact that you're promoting our book and our website and everything like that. So thank you guys very much. We do have some questions from our audience here. The first one, there's some discussion about command and how you use your command, and especially because command can be one of those themes that is thought of as you're kind of a bossy person. But it is a strength. It's something you like to get things done and do that. But the question is really, how do you kind of temper your command so that you can get along with coworkers or people that you need to rely on? How do you temper that? And the person in our chat room here used the word sophistication. How do you make command sophisticated so that you can use it in your work?
Yeah. You want me to take this, Jeremy?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm surprised you just didn't say, I'm going to take this, Jeremy.
See, I'm showing
you just tempered it.
There you go.
You did use sophistication. I like it.
So how I've worked through that is I really started to develop my connectedness strength once I saw it there. And it has saved me and the people around me a lot of headache, quite frankly. The command strength is just one that I actually do put down in my pocket more. It's there like 96% of the time, and then everyone knows me, or actually you don't have to be around me very long. If there is a crisis, they're all going to look my way. So it's more a way of being and an essence of who I am, but I don't show up terribly bossy anymore. However, I will say, you know, I'm in some extra studying right now in my career, and if my group can't figure out which way they're going to go, it's very, very hard for me to go, okay, now, why don't I show you, you know? So it's a really strong leadership skill, but I think that taking your relationship strengths and my intellection strength slows me down there too, because I'll think through the strategy about when to do it, why not to do it, what's the impact, unintended or not, and that allows me to show up more often than not pretty sophisticated with it, but it's taken me a long time.
Great. Yeah, the piece I'd add on this too is, and you said this, Lexi, intentionality, right? And so you were able to say, when do I need to use it? When do I not need to use it? Again, I love your example. For you, those, that relationship building theme of connectedness, even looking at those thinking themes of intellection. The other thing we say a lot to clients and even to coaches is reminding ourselves that individual talent themes and individual people are not one-dimensional.
Right.
And I think when we've got a theme that's even strong like that we're like, oh, does it? It's like that, there might have been, and you might have examples of this, Lexi, like seasons of your life where command was 97% of the time out front, where you're like, I just need to push it, and you were like, gosh, I'm plowing people over instead of giving a voice of direction and charge. Yep. And I think realizing that, okay, wait, I've got connectedness, I've got strategic, I've got future, like making sure that if to the individual who asks the question, that sophistication comes, I think, from intentionally saying, this is one of 5 or 10 or 8 or 12 of my dominant themes. It's not the only one I have. And again, I love that visualization, Lexi. I'm gonna start using that, of when you put that one in your pocket, it's not hard for you to get out, right? It's probably even right there. You're like, boop, here it is, right? Yeah. Quick draw McGraw. It's like, boom, like here it is. Maybe even feels that way, right? Maybe commands again.
Sometimes to someone else it might feel that way.
It might feel that way, yeah. But that element of it's there when I need it, but it doesn't mean I need to, again, kind of wear it across my forehead. So I think that brings that intentionality, brings that sophistication.
Yeah, when we're talking about strengths and we're talking about development, a lot of times when I'm coaching people, those top 5, you pick one and you get going, but eventually over my journey, I ended up figuring out how I was going to bring all 5 up kind of to equal space.
Awesome.
So that not one overrode the other.
Yeah, that's important.
It's always a good webcast when Jeremy references a cartoon character.
Yes, I thought you'd like that. I thought you would like that, Scott.
I do, actually. I watched a lot of cartoons in my childhood. Kind of playing off that conversation, and Lexi, you kind of walked right into our next question, which was great. Okay. But Joanna is asking, how does connectedness and performance match up? Meaning, sometimes it's not easy to understand how you can get to outcomes using connectedness as a theme, but you were saying kind of as a relationship theme and some of that, it helps you balance some of your other themes. How else can you talk to the connectedness and the performance outcomes?
So I can tell you that the connectedness fundamentally is the foundation of who I am as a person. So my mission statement, the company's value set, all sits right with that. And because of that, we're able to actually point that at performance. We have KPIs that you could say that connectedness or any of them actually could point right to. For example, when I'm with a client, so we think of connectedness as relationship with people, but I'll tell you it's relational in general. So I'll be with a client, and strategic and connectedness are usually firing off at a pretty rapid pace. And I'm looking for all those connection points. That's why I did my homework in the beginning, right? So that I have enough data points that when I'm with the client and I'm being with them present, I can actually be present. And I can find, okay, I remember back here they said back in '99 they had this particular issue, or Glassdoor is showing that their management team isn't listening, or whatever that story is. And I'm listening through their viewfinder, and I'm connecting those data points to either validate or require more inquiry. So connectedness is used a lot for performance for me in the inquiry with a client, and then finding multiple solutions. So Strengths is the platform for everything that I do as far as who I am in the world and our framework in the company. However, there's a whole bunch of other tools. I mentioned Crucial Conversations, the Entrepreneurial, or EP10. I got to get used to that name. But there's a lot of books back here. There's the 5 dysfunctions. We use that quite a bit with people. Yep. We have a 360. There's a whole toolkit that you have, and my connectedness allows me to pull the right tool out at the right time.
Great. We have one more question from Dan, and that is how do you use futuristic in your coaching roles, and where does that kind of play out for you?
Yeah, that's a fun one actually for me. I have a ton of fun with this because it allows me to ask questions, or sets me up to ask questions that are very, what if money, time, and your gender and space weren't an issue? What if? And then we can kind of peel back some things and we can look at things more, well, actually not more, they're a lot more big in scope, and then forget about reality. And who cares if there's gravity? What if we can look at those things and just talk about what some possibilities would be for you in layering out your strengths or aiming your strengths is a lot in, aligning with the right work that you do in the world. And then that kind of gets fun for people because they're like, well, okay, well, if it doesn't matter if the person's dead or alive, if I have dinner with them, well, who would I have dinner with? And if it doesn't matter that gravity doesn't exist and I don't have to drive a car, well, how would I get from here to there? And so innovation is a really big thing that follows from those conversations. And when someone starts to innovate their own life, it's pretty amazing. Magic starts to happen. I like that strength there.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, Jeremy, any concluding thoughts?
No, I think, and again, Lexi, I appreciate the work you've done around your own themes, because again, I think that that's so much of what I'm hearing. And again, we talk about how just because somebody took the StrengthsFinder assessment doesn't mean these are your strengths, right? It's an indicator. These are your signature themes of talent that if you invest in them, you can become strong at. And again, I'd even encapsulate what you do is advising, and it kind of brings again that crucial conversation push to people. That's unique to you, and you can see that thread of all 5 of your themes. And even if we took time to look at your 6 through 10 or kind of wherever you kind of have that cutoff for your dominant themes, it's like you've taken the time, and I want to thank you for doing that, because it's let you kind of take those again from raw to mature, where again the people around you see it and we naturally go, how do I do that, or how do I leverage my connectedness like that? And even tell me about your futuristic. Every one of your themes when you talk about it, you're like, this one's so fun, or here's where I like that I have command. It's just that ability. There's an energy that naturally comes through a human being, right, to play to their strengths. And so again, I thank you for demonstrating that for us. And again, even I think so many other coaches out there, the challenge is take the time to understand yourself, and then as you're working through that with your clients, it's that same thing of owning it, appreciating it, and like you said early on, Lexi, it's tying it to something, right? Tying it to performance, tying it to that, not just being, but now we can go do something and there can be impact behind it. So thanks for your time. I know it's a busy time of year. I know you and I were joking that we weren't even sure if we'd have a pre-call. We did have one, right? But our schedules are so busy, so thank you for giving up your time today to be on Call to Coach.
You're welcome. Thanks, guys. Happy holidays.
You bet, and thank you, Jeremy and Lexi both. We'll remind everyone to take full advantage of all the resources that we have available at Gallup-Strengthscenter.com. Additionally, if you would like to send us your questions or comments or would like to be a guest blogger on the coaching site, please email us at coaching@gallup.com. You can also catch the recorded audio and video of this show and all past webcasts as well. As to the link to our Facebook, YouTube pages, all of that, you can find all of those things at coaching.gallup.com. We want to thank everyone for joining us today. This is officially our last U.S.-based Called to Coach webcast for 2014. We have one more, I believe, in Singapore or somewhere like that yet to go this year, but this is our last U.S.-based one for 2014.
And January 9th, right, Scott, when we're back?
January 9th we'll be back with Stosh Walsh, who is a strengths coach also. He's also written a lot of blogs for us on our blog site. On behalf of Jeremy, Jim, and everyone here at Gallup, we wish you a safe and happy New Year, and we look forward to connecting with you again many times in the new year. Goodbye, everyone.